Welcome to Man in America, a voice of reason in a world gone mad. I'm your host, Seth Holhouse. So here we are, roughly 2 months into having Trump in the White House and having realistically strong control over what's happening at the political level in DC. Yet, a lot of us are banging our heads against the wall and asking, I think, the exact same question. When will the arrests begin? We saw what happened in 2020. We saw what happened in 2016 and 2017. We're now uncovering just massive amounts of corruption, not just waste that Doge is uncovering, but corruption, theft of taxpayer money, absolute abuse of the power that these people, in a lot of sense, weren't even given. They stole these positions, or these bureaucratic positions that they got to worm their way into. And this is, I think, like the billion-dollar question is, when will the arrests begin? Because I think I can only wait so long of hearing, oh, don't worry, the Epstein files are coming. Oh, here's the JFK files. And yeah, obviously our own agencies and a lot of other agencies are complicit in assassinating a sitting president and everything that's being uncovered. Not to mention, he took like Dan Bongino, the guy that wrote the book on Spygate that exposed the treasonous activity targeting Trump and a lot of other people. And again, we're back to that question is, when will there be justice? When will we see that? All these empty beds at Guantanamo Bay, will they be filling up? And so joining us today is General Michael Flynn, who is someone that has been on the forefront of trying to bring justice to this country, who has been at the receiving end of the deep state persecution. And while he doesn't have an active role in the Trump administration, I'm sure you regularly see videos of him, right beside, President Trump. I think there's a recent video of Trump kind of jokingly saying, I've tried hiring you 10 times over. So it's apparent that there's a relationship there that, I'd hope that, that General Flynn has some level of influence over Trump. I think that he does. But I'm just going to ask the hard questions of, when will the arrest begin? Because we want to see justice, and it's not for just the sake of saying I'm right, you're wrong, or no. It's like we have to protect our Constitution, and if we have people in positions of power that have knowingly gone against our own Constitution, knowingly committed treason, and we don't, within this window that we have under Trump, if we're not able to bring justice to these people, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, where's America going after this? I mean, it's like if you have a child that never gets in trouble and they're never actually punished. There's just constant threats and threats and threats. By the time they're 18 years old, they're going to be stealing cars and doing drugs because it's like, oh well, the rules don't apply to me. And so this is the conversation I've been waiting to have with General Flynn, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. Before we jump in, though, just a few quick notes. First off, if you're new to the show, welcome. Thank you for being here. So obviously, you'll see in this interview that I talk a lot about high-level politics and geopolitics. We also cover health and finance and economics. And so, if you like today's show, make sure you subscribe and stick around. The other thing is that every show is also done as a podcast. So if you like to listen as well as watch, go to your favorite podcast app like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc. Search for Man in America. Follow me on there. You'll get these shows on there as well. If you want to leave a review, it's extra helpful, especially on Apple Podcasts. Those reviews on Apple Podcasts really help the show to reach more people. And I asked you in a recent show, I said, hey, will you go leave some reviews for me on Apple Podcasts? And I saw a bunch of new reviews on there. So thank you for those of you that left that review on Apple Podcasts. Thank you. I really, really appreciate that. So let's go ahead and just dive right into this interview with General Michael Flynn. And again, I hope to get some answers. I'm sure you do too. Please enjoy. General Flynn, it is always an honor to have you on the show. I really appreciate you making the time for me. So thank you for being here.
Absolutely, Seth. It's great to be with you and your wonderful audience too.
Thank you. So I know that we've got a tight timeline, so I want to get cut straight to the chase. And the question that I have is, when are the arrests going to start? Because we've been waiting. We've got the JFK files, we have the Epstein files being dripped out, we've got all the Doge corruption. And I think so many of us, like yourself, that have seen, even since 2020, layer upon layer of fraud and corruption, and I mean, way worse, treason. And I
Yeah.
mean, you know more than anybody the inside of what these operations look like from the DOJ, the different
Yeah.
agencies. So how would you answer that? When
Well,
are the arrests
so let's
going?
jump right into that because I think, Seth, that's the $64,000 question. I get it every single day I mean, whatever time it is, it's 12, whatever, it's middle of the day. I probably have had that question asked to me a dozen times already today. I just spent the last 5.5 days up in Washington, D.C. Every single person I run into, both in government and outside government, and the ones in government are, who I know because I've been around for a while, and I know a lot of people that are in government, particularly in the intelligence community at a more junior level. Every single person asks me that same question: when is somebody going to be held accountable? And people they're not wanting to see, some low-level FBI agent walked out of the New York field office, and actually he wasn't low level; he was assistant director, and he went out to the tune of bagpipes and people crying, on his behalf. Right? He should have been arrested instead of just simply fired. So, when are people going to be held accountable? That's the big question. And I will tell you, the American people right now are not going to be satisfied with, well, we have, a couple of investigations ongoing, because they're going to go, wait a second. That's not why we put Donald Trump in office. We put Donald Trump in office to eliminate the deep state, to go after these people that committed treason, sedition, that conspired to undermine a duly elected president, that conspired to basically ruin this country way back in 2016 and 2017. That's all been well documented. That's all discovered in various legal cases, to include mine. Parts of the Durham report from way back when. We cannot have another, couple of years go by and nothing happens. And I want people to remember, it's just like in 2017 when Trump took over the White House in 2017, and I was out in a couple of weeks, but when he took over in 2017, the House of Representatives was under the Republican leadership. The Senate was under the Republican leadership, exactly as it is right now. And these guys in Congress, they're worried about their next recess, instead of, taking some of these actions that the president is signing as executive orders and running them through like on a fast track to get them signed off as law in some cases, right? Birthright citizenship as an example. And there's many other examples of some of these executive orders that the president, that it could easily be turned into law. And the other thing is, it really irritated me to no end. And I know Trump, he pushed to get the continuing resolution so we wouldn't shut down the government. I would have been probably, if I was on his team, I would have argued just the opposite. I would have said, you know what, let's shut the government down. Let's shut the federal government down. They can always just sign off on a continuing resolution, in 90 days or whatever. Let's see how much we can function, because we can function. I've been through government shutdowns for, a couple of weeks at a time. Believe me, it's never what you think it is, Seth. And when people go, well, I'm not getting paid, they always get paid back. So the continuing resolution gave Ukraine more money. It gave all these other, organizations and activities and functions that are going on globally and domestically. It continued to fund them, even though, Elon with Doge and Trump really with executive orders are saying, we're going to reduce the size of government. We're going to cut waste, fraud, and abuse. So all these different things. So, I would have argued against it, to have signed off on the continuing resolution, because all it does is it continues the waste, fraud, and abuse. I mean, I don't see it any other way. And I try to be, like far more strategic in how I view this. But we're in a really desperate situation in this country. The more Doge digs into things, and you see it on certainly on social media being reported. I mean, they're finding trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars going to nowhere. I mean, it's going to somebody, and that's I posted the other day about, okay, Elon, great, good job, A+, move faster, but I want the thread pulled to where the money is going. And then once we see where the money's going, if I'm the U.S. government and you're the recipient of a buttload of money, I want to know that Seth Holehouse is getting, I don't know, a $500 million a year for whatever. Why? And then what's Seth Holehouse doing with it? And then I go to Seth Holehouse, and now you get into what's called in the military a commander's inquiry, right? The initial beginnings of an investigation. That doesn't take months. It takes a couple of phone calls, and it takes me to go find you, sit you down, and go, okay, why is that money coming to you? What are you doing with the money? And how long has it been going on? And you answer the questions. And if you go, well, I'm going to take I need a lawyer. Then you go, no, you don't. In fact, you're not going to get a lawyer because I'm here on the authority of the President of the United States for national security purposes. And you're not going to get a lawyer, actually, because I need to know, because we have you dead to rights for basically theft. Okay. So you either tell me what you need to tell me, or we're going to take you and you're going to find yourself in prison for the next 25 to 50 years of your life, maybe forever. Right. So I guarantee that part of the thread, because you'll buckle now, I'm using you metaphorically, but you'll buckle, because I know people in the system that this needs to happen to. They need to have the FBI, probably elements of the Secret Service, certainly the Marshal Service, show up to their houses unannounced, arrest them, take their computers, right? You don't have to rifle through their underwear drawers, but get their data, get their phones, take them, they don't need warrants. They need presidential authority. Okay, presidential authority. That's all they need. And I know a couple that if they went and did it like tonight, those people on the way to the courthouse, or not the courthouse, on the way to the jailhouse, they would spill the beans before they got there. They'd probably spill the beans within 5 minutes, because they don't want to go to jail, and they know that they have committed crimes. They know that they have conspired to undermine a president of the United States, which is essentially conspiracy, and also you can tie it to treason. They have committed serious fraud, not just waste and abuse. Waste and abuse is abuse. Those aren't, maybe abuse could be tied to a criminal act, but fraud is a crime. So they know that they have committed fraud. I mean, we're talking about so much fraud, not just waste and abuse. It's all waste, it's all abuse, but it's fraud. And that fraud is a crime. And so we have got to stop with we found, we're changing the sex of rats in Colombia or some crap, just nutty stuff, and we start to, what happens, Seth, is it starts to become a joke, right? People start to do memes of it on social media. You hear late night comedians joking about it. You hear people, conversations that I'm in. I'm not joking about this. This is very serious time. We don't have that much time. And we've seen, and we can maybe talk a little bit about this Signal chat thing, which is definitely, it's definitely not good. But we have got to take this very, very seriously. The exposure, noted, excellent, move faster, dig into more, dig into the intel community, dig into the Department of Defense, dig into the Department of Agriculture, Commerce, Interior, all of them across the board, state for sure. Find out where all this money's been flowing, because it's been, it's like, I did joke about the U.S. Institute of Peace. It's actually the U.S. Institute of Peace of the Action, and you're not getting any of it. Other people that come into them are. When you look at some of these big name political people around the country, they don't have businesses that they set up. They actually set up nonprofits, because money can flow easier. Grants, right? $500 million in grants, $1 billion in grants can flow into these nonprofits. And you go and you say, what are these nonprofits doing? And what are they doing with the money? I never heard anything about their money, about what they're doing. When you start to look into them, you go, oh my God, this, I run a nonprofit. My nonprofit, we barely make ends meet, right? I mean, seriously, we don't take a dime from the government. So all these other nonprofits that they have like, $300 million, $500 million. And you're kind of, okay, so are they, and some of them they're taking their money and they're running it back into Democratic campaigns. or they're going into lawfare to counterattack, or to attack the current president of the United States, or prior to him being the president, to attack him with and all of the lawyers, all of the people around him, yours truly included. So
Gold has surged 46% in less than a year, doubling the gains of the Nasdaq and the S&P 500. But this isn't just another rally. Global reserves are shifting, exposing cracks in the monetary system. Investors are losing confidence in paper gold and demanding physical metal, creating a massive gap between gold owed and gold available. But this isn't about how institutions broke another system. It's about how you can profit from it. Right now, Noble Gold Investments has a limited supply of investment-grade gold bars and coins available. As banks scramble to fulfill their obligations, pushing gold prices higher, you can profit. Smart investors are already moving into physical gold. Noble Gold Investments makes it easy for you to do the same. And right now, when you make a qualified investment, Noble Gold will add a free 10th ounce gold coin to your order. Don't wait until it's too late. Visit goldwithseth.com or call 626-654-1906 now and turn their panic into your profit. Again, that's goldwithseth.com or 626-654-1906. You'll find that information in the description for the show as well.
So I think that we are in a place now where this stuff has got to be, the execution of the accountability has to be the next step. And part of the problem, part of this problem, Seth, and for your audience and for anybody that sees this segment, the depth chart in the Department of Justice is not very deep. Okay, so the America First appointees and the political appointees that Trump brought in are exceptional. I think they're all fine, especially the Deputy Attorney General and the Principal Attorney General, the U.S. Attorney for the Washington, D.C. Circuit, a couple of people, Secretary or now Mac Warner, who's in the Civil Rights Division. I mean, there's some really quality people at the top. Below them are still a bunch of prosecutors that were appointed in many cases under Eric Holder or Barack Obama, right? And they're still there. They're still there. Prosecutors, right? Because there's hundreds and hundreds of people that work in these divisions and work in these U.S. Attorney General's offices around the country. It's staggering the number of prosecutors that are left-wing radicals, progressives, and all you got to do is look at their social media sites, which many of them are scrubbing them. They're scrubbing them because they don't want to be discovered. Now that they're kind of hiding a little bit while to see what's going to happen. Am I going to get fired? Right. So I'll keep my nose clean. Here's my cases that I'm doing and not make a big stink. Look. If this were if Kamala had won, God help us, man. If Kamala had won, Donald J. Trump would be in prison for the rest of his life, period. And that sentencing was the 26th of November. They would not have changed it like that radical judge did. And then he basically kind of dropped the whole thing. And he actually pushed it until after Trump leaves office. That's how disgusting these people are. But Trump would be in prison for the rest of his life had he not won. And many, many other, conservative fighters who stood up for him, fought for him over these last 4 years, and certainly in my case for the last over a decade, or certainly for a decade, they would have come after us. They were coming after me, prior, and then the election happened, and they, they've toned it down, slightly, but these are people that haven't, they haven't disappeared. They haven't gone away. They're still there. And we see it.
So do you think
see it in the law?
Do you think that they're going through, say, building the cases right now, and it's part of a longer term strategy, and that they're kind of going through discovery? Because even if you look at, say, Bongino, he wrote the book on Spygate. So these criminal activities, the illegal spying on citizens, all the things that happened, between him and Cash and, a lot of other people that Trump has brought in.
Cash wrote Government
Well,
Gangsters.
exactly. So I think that there's, you mentioned the perception of the people in the audience. I think there's a lot of people that, hey, great, Trump got in, but now they're seeing, the CDC director is WHO ties and she's very pro big pharma products. And they're seeing these things happening and how to make sense of it. And there's been delays on the Epstein. And my concern is that you have this massive populist movement that wanted to get the law and order president back in office to enact law and order. And if
Right.
we go another 3 or 4 months and we're still being dripped Epstein information and been no arrests, I think the core of the American public is going to start with their pitchforks, and rightfully so, because we want justice. We know what happened.
I mean, the American people want justice. The American people want accountability. The American people want to have visible accountability, meaning they want to see very senior people that were involved in taking this government down. We were able to fight through a Marxist coup d'etat of the United States of America, a Marxist revolution. We were able to withstand the body blows because, many of us, and you were included, stood on the ramparts, stood on the redoubts, and stood but I will tell you, some people were like they, metaphorically, some people were shot at and they were shot down off the rampart because they got attacked and they got persecuted and they went to jail in some cases, right? I mean, so there was a physical element to what we faced, because physically some people did in fact go to prison, right?
Oh, like
Some
Tina
people,
Peters is still sitting in
no,
prison.
exactly. Tina's one. Tina saw a crime being committed and they put her in jail for it, and she is still in prison. So she's a great example of people that were standing on the walls, like the Jericho walls, the walls of Jericho, right? Standing there being besieged by this progressive Marxist revolution and this attempted takeover of our country. And we stood there and realized that this was happening. Some of us knew it, explicitly. Some of us only intuitively were, okay, it just didn't feel right, but we stood our ground, and we were able to overcome, like Trump likes to say, we had an election that was too big to rig. We really got smart. The American people used good God-given common sense, got smart, and they did things like they showed up to early vote. They paid real close attention to the mail-in stuff, right? You see the U.S. Postal Service director, I guess, resigned today. I'm going to tell you, that guy probably going to need to go to jail. The person that just resigned, because I know for a fact the U.S. Postal Service, at least out of the New York office, was directly involved in the 2020 fraudulent election. Okay, they put ballots on Gaylords or pallets, and then they put them onto trucks, and then they ship those trucks all over the country. So we know that for a fact. That case is that is a whistleblower case that is pending, and I guarantee the U.S. Postmaster General resigned because he knows that that's coming, and that is coming. So that's a sidebar example of those of us who fought back, and we have to continue to fight back. But I want these people, I don't want them to be fired. If they're in government service right now, the heads of those agencies, those departments, particularly the Attorney General, has the full authority to arrest, put them on home detention, take their passport, right? You don't have to stop their pay. In fact, pending you're under investigation, and you'll maintain your pay pending the outcome of the investigation. But you're not going to be fired. I don't want you to walk away and get your pension. I don't want that. Because you committed a crime. You lied to me. And now I'm talking about the assistant director in charge of the New York field office for the FBI. That person lied to the Attorney General, and that was clear. I mean, she said it. That's why she fired him. Should not have fired him. She should have arrested him. And she had the full authority to arrest him and do all the things that I just laid out. So, President of the United States is the only person in the United States government that takes an oath of office and uses the word preserve. The rest of us use the word protect and defend, or defend and protect, depending on how it comes out, right? Defend and protect. But the president uses the word preserve. And because of that word, he has certain authorities only invested in the president of the United States, only vested in him, not the vice president. And the president of the United States has authorities under the National Security Act. And he did just sign off on something the other day where basically this Boasberg character judge, the president signed off and said, you know what, we're not going to give you any more evidence for, he basically declared a national security emergency because this Boasberg was nuts. And he's trying to be the jury, the judge and the executioner, right? In a judge, not an elected official. So the president did the right thing the other day, very smart. And he used this tool that he has. He's going to probably end up having to use that tool, I think, far more. And I think we're gonna go into a period of time where, this is, I mean, yesterday was essentially 2 months, right? Because the inauguration was on a Monday, so yesterday was 2 months, not necessarily to the day, but 2 months in time where the administration's been, and they've been doing a lot. The president's done a lot, and everybody that's pro-Trump. There's nobody more pro-Trump than I am. If I was not pro-Trump, now I'm also one of these guys. I'm going to be very blunt because I want shit to get done. I want things to be done, and I want to help him and his team to get stuff done. But I'm going to use my platform to make sure that people understand how to get things done. I didn't. I'm not I didn't retire as a private from the Army or as a junior level intel analyst from the intel community. I ran one of the largest intel agencies in the world. Got to the level of national security advisor, was brutally attacked, and for reasons that are now very clear, right? And so how am I operating? How am I functioning? I'm doing exactly what I need to do right now. It's just talking to a guy like you to say to your audience and many, many other audiences out there who will listen that there are authorities within these leaders that we have in our government right now for them to take extraordinary action during a time of national emergency. I believe our nation is at war. We are in a spiritual war. We are in a fifth generation war for certain. I mean, I wrote a book on that, and know exactly what I'm talking about. We are up against a massive, massive domestic set of problems. Education system, healthcare system, crime on our streets, massive drug problems with fentanyl, the illegal immigration that not just went on for the last 4 years, but went on for the last 40 years. I mean, Obama, he did some damage to this country as well. Trump was able to slow that down. But a lot of people came in under the 8 years of Obama. And then we know it's somewhere between, 10 and 15 million. We don't even know the numbers because the record keeping was horrendous by the Biden administration, but it could be as high as 20 million people that came in here illegally. Sending a couple of hundred people to a prison in El Salvador is good. It makes for good press. I appreciate President Bukele of El Salvador and his absolute support to this country. Speaking as an American citizen who cares about, the kinds of relationships that we need overseas with good, strong leaders. He's one of them. But that number was only like 200. Let's just say it was 400. Let's say it was 1,000. And that's just that one group of Venezuelans. We know that the number of Venezuelans in this country that came in here that are trained operatives, trained. I'm not just talking about some guy that, left his family and moved and marched north to come across the border looking for a better life. I'm talking about trained operatives from this, TDA organization, Tren de Aragua. These guys, it's at least 5,000. It might be more that are trained. So if we send a couple of hundred on planes down to El Salvador, there's another couple of thousand just of those guys. Never mind what I learned about a week ago is we have the potentially 24,000 Afghan Taliban and ISIS that were given passes basically because of our stupid relationship under the Biden administration, on the stupid Biden administration, where we were giving them like $40 million a week to Afghanistan, right, to the Taliban, right? So I was given a thing, we've reported this in. up to 24,000 members of Taliban/ISIS that were given basically an access pass into the United States of America. They're not here to make America great again. They're not here to make America great again. They're here to do damage. They're here to do harm. And so how is that going to transpire? How will it play out? I don't know. You know, I can analyze a bunch of options and a bunch of situations, and I do believe that some of this is being done. But when I look at our military, and I know what Pete Hegseth, you know, what he has his arms around, and it's a big bear. It's an elephant, you know, or if there's a bigger than an elephant, maybe an old dinosaur that's dead now, you know, because parts of the Department of Defense is dead and some of it needs to be changed. But we have, you know, I mean, we have admirals and generals who are undermining or moving too slow, you know, who for the last 4 years, you know, force-fed DEI and the COVID vaccine to over 80,000 of our members of the military who were forced out, okay, across the board. Good, strong, solid people, again, who stood on the walls of Jericho and metaphorically were told, you're out. And many of them got out, you know, under a cloud, right? So they couldn't go get jobs. Their families were ruined. They had to go back to their communities in shame. I mean, over 80,000 in our military. So Pete has a big issue there to deal with. And those are generals and admirals who know it. And the generals and admirals are going to sit there and they're going to say, well, the policy was we follow what our civilian leaders tell us to do. Okay. All right. I got that. Was it legal, moral, and ethical? Does it meet those standards? Does it meet that criteria? You know, legal, maybe. I don't know. That's have to be judged by the legal guys. Moral and ethical? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And so these admirals and generals who are keeping their mouths shut and they're changing office names and they're getting rid of, they're getting rid of briefings that they gave on DEI and social reengineering of our force and whether or not we can include transgender, soldiers in the foxholes with in the Marine Corps and in infantry units. We can't have this. We cannot have this. And so there's accountability that needs to be had. Excuse me, Seth. There's accountability that needs to be had that is going to cause people to go to prison and should. And then there's accountability that needs to be had that should cause people to be relieved of their duties and responsibilities and told, thank you for your service, go home. And I'm telling you, I'm letting people know that. I am letting people know that. And at a certain point in time, we're 2 months, like I said, I started this diatribe off. We're 2 months into this. If you and I have had conversations over time about different things, and if you and I are having this same kind of conversation in another 2 months, Seth, we're not in a good place. We are not. We're not in a good place. I mean, if the American people don't feel like there's action, and I'm not talking about more executive orders. They're great, but I mean real action against the people that tried to destroy this nation. And I'm saying that very precisely. They wanted to destroy the United States of America. They wanted the Constitution to be basically destroyed, changed, whatever, eliminated. They want the United States of America to become a Marxist state. And they will lie, cheat, steal, deceive, all the way to achieving that. Okay. And I, haven't used the word Democrat once yet on their show. So I just did. They are not. Okay. They are progressive Marxists. This is a Marxist movement in our country. It is a large movement. It is well funded. It includes Chinese, the CCP support. It has an element of very radicalized Islamism inside of it. And that's just here in this country. Never mind what's happening in Europe. Never mind the problems that are happening in the Middle East. And so these are big issues. These are big problems. We cannot move forward. The nation cannot move forward I don't care how good our how much Trump, adjusts the economy, and he will. But we cannot move forward unless people are held accountable. And I mean very, very senior people, and they all know who I'm talking about. You know who I'm talking about, and I've said it many times. It's the start with Obama and work your way down, right? I mean, and maybe you don't throw a former president into prison, but maybe you do. Maybe somebody says, well, who directed you, John Brennan? Who directed you, Jim Clapper? Who directed you, Susan Rice? Under oath, under the lights, and with the threat of prison. Okay. And so who directed you? Well, if they say nothing, okay, then that's fine. Then you're going to go to prison. You're going to prison. You're going to prison for treason. Okay. Treason. That's a very strong word. It's a very strong word. And like all these pardons, right? These pardons, the only thing that can't overcome a pardon is treason, is the commitment of treason. I mean, I get called a traitor all the time. And I say, well, wait a second. And so if I'm a traitor, why am I walking the streets, right? If I committed treason, why am I walking the streets? I was never charged with that. They dismissed my case because they lied, right? And so, you think Mueller and Wiseman, Andrew Wiseman, who was the deputy to Mueller, would have let me go had I was a traitor or that I committed treason? The treason was committed against me as not just Mike Flynn, an Army general, but the national security advisor by a duly elected president of the United States. The outgoing administration under Barack H. Obama committed treason. They committed a conspiracy to undermine a duly elected president, and it hasn't stopped. It hasn't stopped.
Yeah.
So that's some very strong words and language that I just used, but I don't know what else to say. I don't know where else we are except there. And so now we stood the ramparts, we stood the walls. We're looking for accountability. Elon Musk, move faster, pull the thread all the way to the end. Show us who's the initial recipient of these funds, and let's start there and let's start asking questions. Those people can be brought in under national security reasons and without lawyers. Okay, that's a strong statement because we are at risk. As I said earlier, the president is the only one that has that word preserve the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, right? Preserve, not just protect and defend, but preserve. Our Constitution is absolutely at risk. And the president understands this. But keep in mind, like I've said to many people, and I'll shut up here, Seth, the president is one man, and he can only do so much, and I know he does. The guy works like a fiend. He rarely sleeps. He's up going all the time. He's out fighting a good fight. He's doing what he can do. Once he signs off on an executive order, it's up to people to start to execute. So people in government, some of whom are going to push back, they're not going to execute. And we, the people, what we need to do is we need to put pressure on our elected representatives. And we need to be threatening these elected representatives that, look, we're not going to be giving you any more money. We're not going to be supporting you in the next round of elections here. We're going to go find other people. We're tired. The American people are tired of being robbed, tired of being ripped off. Enough is enough.
I agree. I mean, I'd love to see some of these cold beds in Guantanamo Bay warming up with some warm bodies because we need to have this. And so, in parting thoughts, I know we've already gone past your time, which I appreciate. What's your last bit of advice for people watching and that are anxious? The average person, the people that are watching this show. What's your advice to them?
Yeah, my advice is always what it's been. It's I use the phrase "local action equals a national impact," and I always will go back to that. And a piece of leadership advice that I learned, and I use it, is control what you can control and take control of it, right? If things that you can't control, you can gripe about them all day long, but if you can't control them, like what the president's going to do or what the attorney general of the United States is going to do, complain about it. And there is pressure that can be put on in the world of social media and the world of influence operations, and that's fine. But at your local level, if you can get involved in your churches, in your communities, put pressure down in areas of your life that you can control and take control of that. We only have so much more time left in this country. I believe that. And Donald J. Trump is a historical figure in US and clearly world history. Guys like him, they come around, about maybe every millennium. I don't know, maybe certainly every 100, 200 years. I mean, the only other figures that I know in our US history that are on scale with him is our founding father, George Washington, our first president, and our 16th president, Abraham Lincoln. I mean, all the others in between, they were, noble and valiant and did, interesting things during their presidencies. But this is an existential threat to our country, just like the Civil War was, and just like the Revolutionary War was. We didn't have a country, so we were creating one. And it was existential to whether or not we were even going to have freedom like we have. Lincoln understood it. Washington clearly understood. Lincoln understood it. And Trump understands it. But just like, Lincoln found his Grant, right? Washington had his internal spy network, and he had his Nathan Hales, and he had his, the great leaders at the time that were founders that fought for this country, right? They gave up their treasure. They gave up everything. I mean, we have to be able to, those of us like me, and others, we got to give up our time. We got to give up some resources. We got to give up time to pray, right? I mean, all the things that we can control, take control. So local action, get involved. It will have a national impact, and we don't have that much time. My guess is we probably have a year. We actually have less than a year before the entire country, because the political winds and the political establishment will shift to the next election. And that election may not matter. I mean, the American people just spoke and said, we're going to give you the White House, we're going to give you the House of Representatives, and we're going to give you the Senate. We're going to give you the majority of states' legislatures. We're going to give you the majority of conservative or Republican governors in this country. That's what exists right now. And we're not taking advantage of it because typically, the establishment thinks that they know better, and they just like to muddle along because they're the ones benefiting from these trillions of dollars that we're being ripped off from our coffers, right? From U.S. taxpayer coffers. So I want to see accountability. That's what I want to see.
Yeah, you and I both. Well, General Flynn, thank you so much for your time today. How can people follow you, support you? What kind of direction would you give people?
Yeah, great. Thank you. People can go to generalflynn.com, right? Generalflynn.com. That's one website. If they haven't seen my movie, please go to flynnmovie.com. It's a great movie. It's a wonderful movie. We just won a couple of great awards. Yep, you can stream it on Amazon. It's probably the easiest and cheapest. Got some great books in there. I publish a weekly newsletter. I have a Substack. I mean, I got a lot of things going on because I'm an information fiend. My training is in the world of information and intelligence. And so I've, got a bunch of books. We always run deals. You buy a couple, you get something for free, all that kind of stuff. So go to generalflynn.com, learn more about me, and help me out, because that's how I'm out here fighting, right?
Well, thank you for that, and thank you for the fight that you're putting forward. So, again, thanks again for the time that you've given us today. Hopefully, this is helpful. I know that we're all kind of grasping at straws. What can we do? But it's good to have your voice as part of this effort. And so I thank you for your time today. It's great speaking to you as always.
God bless. Talk to you later, Seth.
Thank you. Do you keep hearing more cases of your friends and family getting a life-threatening diagnosis of cancer? Or perhaps it's even happened to you? Well, the unfortunate reality is that turbo cancer is now a worldwide epidemic. But the question we should all be asking is, what can I do about it? Well, the good news is that there are therapies that are working and proven in thousands of clinical studies. So, one study on PubMed found that breast cancer's growth rate dropped by 40% in only 24 hours after using red light therapy. Another study on prostate cancer found that 49% of the over 400 male participants went into remission with just one red light therapy session. A lymphoma cancer pilot study showed that 3 out of 3 of the patients became cancer free. It sounds unbelievable, but it's true. And you can discover all this information and more in a special training program from investigative medical journalist Jonathan Otto, who will show you how you can use red light, including the specific wavelengths as proven by studies, for all different types of cancer, as well as tinnitus, weight loss, wrinkles, acne, dementia, cognitive function, depression, anxiety, long COVID, jab injuries, stem cell regeneration, lower back pain, sciatica, the whole array of autoimmune diseases, including thyroid disease, arthritis, lupus, and gut disorders, and so much more. In fact, you can get your own in-home red light therapy device risk-free, as you're completely covered by a 60-day money-back guarantee and a 3-year warranty. On top of that, we've got financing options so you can get it now and pay later. And the best thing, folks, is that this technology has become amazingly affordable. It's way less than you'd expect, with the smaller units costing only a couple $100. So just go to myredlight.com to make sure you don't miss out this free special training program and claim the extremely limited time bonus gifts and discounts, which include an additional 10% off with the coupon code SETH. Again, go to myredlight.com to get access to the free training. And if you make a purchase, make sure you use a promo code SETH, that's SETH, to get an additional 10% off the already heavily discounted red light therapy products. Numbers don't lie. The impact that Balance of Nature makes every single day is astounding. You can see the numbers for yourself at their website, balanceofnature.com. So listen to these stats concerning Balance of Nature's worldwide success. More than 1,000 success stories are reported each month. Hundreds of thousands of customers worldwide, millions of orders delivered each year, and billions, yes, billions of fruits and veggie supplements consumed by people who've decided to start living better. There's only one number missing. That's you. Do what I did and add yourself to these numbers. Start taking Balance of Nature's whole food supplements, like so many others around the world. Here's another number that should get your attention: 35%. Use my discount code SETH to get 35% off, plus free shipping and their money back guarantee. You must use my discount code SETH. So call them at 800-2468-751 and use the discount code SETH, or order online at balanceofnature.com. Use discount code SETH to get 35% off plus free shipping.